Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Till Mets Do Us Part, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, just like we are each and every single Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 o'clock back here on the West Coast. It is John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez, ready to talk, I don't know, some stuff about the New York Mets with you. But first up, Ibby, Happy New Year, and how you feeling, man?
Happy New Year to you as well, John. I'm feeling pretty good. Obviously, I thought we'd be rolling into this episode with some more concrete news. It was good that we got some inklings of some things that could be inching a certain way when it comes to the loading screen that has been loading nonstop for what seems to be day 437 of Carlos Correa watch. But we are working our way towards it. I'm still as confident as I was when we last spoke about it. But I'm excited about a lot of things with the show, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. And hopefully we can, fill up the chat like we did last week and have some fun. Let's do it.
Look, man, I piggyback off of that. We can joke about it, and we will. And the part of the reason why I can joke about Carlos Correa with this, forget about buffering. It looks like the red ring of death for anybody who used to play the old school Xbox back in the day. Man. But man, I can joke about it because I'm still as confident as I was last week. I'm still as confident as I was the week before. I'm still as confident as I was the week before that. I'm as confident as I was when I tried to wake you up with a million text messages when it first happened at 3 o'clock in the morning East Coast time all those weeks ago. So for me, not much has changed. It's kind of curious. It's a little strange. People who saw the thumbnail for today's YouTube episode know that there's all kinds of conspiracies about what kind of shirt his son's wearing and what kind of batting gloves he's got and the style of mitt that he has with him and going to work and what does that mean and why was his brother in New York City and all this stuff. I find it hilarious. And I find it hilarious, I think, ultimately because my confidence has not wavered. I think Carlos Correa needs the Mets, and I think the Mets need Carlos Correa. And anybody who follows me on Twitter or watches this show or listens to the audio version of this show knows that I've been championing for Carlos Correa since what? It'd be October. So, I think it's a match that is too good to let go. And with that said, I don't see a way out of it. Let's jump into the comments really quick and shout out some folks. We've got a lot of people watching. Patty in NYC saying hello.
Welcome back, Patty.
Well.
Welcome back.
We got Carlos Ramos. Happy New Year's, brothers and sisters. Yes, Happy New Year to everybody watching. Year. And then we've got Rael saying Happy New Year, Carlos, but just to Carlos. No, I'm just kidding. Just responding. I'm joking. And then we've got Patty throwing out a Happy New Year as well. So look, Ibby, it's funny because the Mets and a lot of baseball seems to be in a little bit of a holding pattern because of Carlos Correa. Last week we talked about what the Mets might do, what they could do if he signs, if he doesn't sign, where they might go. And, some reports have come out lately about Eduardo Escobar, about Carlos Carrasco, about Darren Ruff. And as far as I'm concerned, they can put him on a rocket and shoot him into the sun. That one doesn't matter. But, there has been some stuff about like, hey, the Mets might make a move or two or three, but they really got to know what's going on with Carlos Correa first. So in that regard, I would say for me, that's the only frustrating bit. And for everybody who's watching this live, you can throw your comments in. Where's your confidence level? Rank it out of 100% for this Carlos Correa signing. Is it going to go through? We don't know when, but what's your confidence level between 0 and 100%? We want to hear from you guys. But Ibby, that's the frustrating part for me is that we're just kind of waiting. Everybody's waiting.
And it's tough, especially for Mets fans, because so much was going on at such a high clip. And money was flying everywhere, and players and transactions and 40-man moves and all these different things were going on. And now it's kind of just been silent. And
it's radio dark, man.
It's radio dark. It's like nothing. And it's like, and it's bad because it's, I'm sure yours and mine and other Mets fans' screen time is like through the roof as you're just constantly refreshing to want some sort of resolve with this entire thing. Because yes, I believe, and we'll talk about the Ken Rosenthal report in a little bit. Like, I believe the things that were said in there, and I believe that other things are still to come, but you need this domino to fall. And, my confidence meter to jump ahead of everyone else, that might be throwing things to the comments right now, but my confidence meter it's beyond 100. Like, I think the guy's going to be here. Like, I'm very confident when I say that, but I understand that things need to be written down. And we talked about language last week and making sure everything is proper. And look, is the report true about Steve Cohen when it and the Mets going to the league and the Players Association and trying to work in different clauses that haven't been seen before? I have no idea, and I'm not going to sit there and pretend like I know. And I just want the result.
And in fairness, nobody knows. I don't want to take a shot at. Is it Marino? Is it Mike Marino?
Michael Marino, yes.
Yeah, it does have some good stuff every once in a while, but but to come out there and definitively say that the league offices being closed had nothing to do with it, I don't know if I buy that. I think that could be a holdup amongst other things, because I think there is going to be some interesting language. So I don't want to say like, oh, this guy doesn't know anything or anything like that, because he has had some sources in the past, but to definitively say it is always the problem for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other reason why I need this, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, maybe later on in the show, the main reason I need this to happen is because Mets Twitter is starting to do what it does best, and that's become, the Mets Twitter that eats itself alive. And what I mean is, so many things are coming out now, whether it's like reservations about Carlos Correa, the freaking Lindorks are coming back now. We have so many things that are popping up because people are just trying to latch onto something to talk about, and it's the negative things I don't want to see, that nobody wants to see. So I need this signing to happen, mainly because I want to get back on track in terms of the good things that we're rolling with the offseason and the building towards 2023, as opposed to harping on stupid things because nothing's going on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And that's why I said the holding pattern for me is the most frustrating part. Look, the Mets have done great work. They've had a great offseason, whether or not they get Carlos Correa. He would be, I don't want to say he's the cherry on top, because I think they need him. I think they could really use him. But I think if they don't get him for whatever reason, it's not going to sour my feelings on the offseason. And that's where Mets Twitter kind of starts to rear its ugly head. And some people have said that. They're like, if they don't at this point, it's going to be a complete embarrassment and a waste offseason. Like, oh, okay. A waste offseason where they've spent more money than anybody in the history of baseball to reshape their team on a fly. The team that had no bullpen, the team that had no starting pitching because everybody was a free agent. And what they do, they went out and got the top closer, the top pitcher, the top international pitcher signing. They went out and got another guy to eat innings in Quintana. They went out and got David Robertson, who everybody wanted last year. They trade for Brooks Ray. They bring back Adam Ottavino, the best pitcher not named Edwin Diaz in the bullpen last year. Like, you can't sit there and tell me it's a failed offseason. I will literally jump through the phone and start slapping people because that's ridiculous. But the Mets do have some stuff that they want to do. I mentioned Eduardo Escobar. I mentioned maybe you and I mentioned last week on the show, hey, could still use a fourth outfielder. Maybe they want to trade Escobar in a deal that gets you back a guy like Kepler. Maybe they want to go and sign Adam Duvall. People were chiming in the comments last week. Hey, go get Trey Mancini, go get this guy. And so, the Mets do have a couple of small pieces I think they want to do to fill everything out. Yeah. Right now they have to wait. So let's jump back into the comments really quick.
Sure.
Couple people doing their confidence level. Carlos Ortiz saying 99% sure. And then we've got Carlos Ramos saying my confidence is 100. I'm as confident as Bret Hart was in Montreal. Nah, just kidding. I'm 100% sure it will happen. Yeah, you got to be careful with that because anybody who watches old school wrestling knows that things did not go as planned for Bret Hart in Montreal. But if you're watching this live for the very first time, first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you guys for being here. We record live every Wednesday at 4 o'clock or thereabouts. And you can see the watching on YouTube is the best way to have your comments, your questions, all of your interactions seen, heard, looked at, all that stuff in real time. But if you don't have the opportunity to do that, as soon as the show is over, you can watch the entire thing on our YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Till Mets Do Us Part. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Till Mets Do Us Part. If you want to wait till tomorrow, you could also listen to the audio version of the show wherever it is you get your podcast, courtesy of the Chop Sports Network. So now that housekeeping is out of the way, Ibby, we talked a little bit, we alluded to the Ken Rosenthal report on the radio show, and we've got the audio here. It's about a minute long for everybody watching, but I think it's good stuff, and I want to be able to dissect it with you. So let's listen into Ken Rosenthal.
We expect it to be a dramatically different deal. It's not going to be 12 years, $315 guaranteed. The question, again, is to what extent does the language change? Does the deal change? And how is Carlos Correa going to be once he gets through all this? Will it be a happy Met? Will he be upset? Who knows? One thing I said earlier about the leverage. Yes, the Mets have all the leverage, but they also want a happy player. And you don't want to start off a relationship, especially a long-term relationship, with a player with a certain degree of contentiousness. You want that player to be comfortable with the deal he's gotten and not feel like he has gotten shafted in some respect. Clearly, if you're Correa and you're Boras, you're going to have to recognize that this is a concern that has arisen with two different clubs, and it's going to need to be addressed.
Some good stuff there, Ibby. A lot of
Definitely.
stuff. So just your reactions to Ken Rosenthal and what he had to say. That was on the Athletic radio show, or the Athletic podcast, came out yesterday. So your thoughts, and then I'll give you mine.
I don't think anything he's saying is wrong. I mean, the one thing I thought was interesting was definitely because last week, I think it was last week, I came on here and I said that, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I've lost count with the Correa tracker at this point. But I did mention on the show at one point that I didn't think much was going to change when it came to the contract, especially when it came to the money, because of, once things are agreed upon, all the stuff, I thought that Boras and Correa, and specifically the players union, were going to fight to make sure he got every dollar like they always do. But when I hear Rosenthal say, look, there's going to be a deal. Everyone believes he's going to be a Met, but it's not going to be for that contract. So that makes me start thinking, well, obviously it's going to be less years. Obviously it's going to be less money. How is this going to shake out? Are there going to be escalators for him to get more money in the end? How are they going to make this interesting? What I mentioned before, does this all tie into the rumors that we were hearing when it came to special clauses? Maybe that includes money. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But I think everything Ken said is proper. I think, the Mets, and I have been saying this as well, the Mets do have all the leverage. But he's right. You want a happy player. But the one thing I didn't agree with, I mean, not so much not agree, but what he might have been insinuating was like, is Carlos Correa going to be a happy Met? Like things like that. Like I hear that and I say, well, I think he would be, because I don't think he would be continuously fighting to figure this out with this team. If he was already upset with where it was going, he would have went back out and said, screw it, I'll take less money and I'll go play somewhere else because I don't like the way things are going here with the Mets and how the conversations are going. So I didn't agree with that part, but everything else, I think it's proper. And yes, you do want to make sure that you're starting off on the right foot, because let's be honest, even if this isn't the 12 years, it's not the 13 years you got in San Fran, it's not the 12 years originally, guess what? Odds are you're looking at least 8 years. That's long term. You're here for the long haul. You're here for your prime. You want to have a happy player. So I understand that sense. You want to make sure you're starting things off on the right foot with a brand new, definitely core piece player for this team.
Yeah, I'll jump back into the comments before I give you guys my reaction. But Carlos Ramos saying, I think the waiting is a good thing. It shows we're being responsible while conducting our business. I'm happy for this. Hashtag
I get that.
LGM. And that kind of echoes off of some of the stuff that you were just saying. And then we've got Baseball and BBQ saying, how does Ken Rosenthal know this? No leaks coming out of the Mets or Correa camp. He's just speculating. And I think some of that is fair. I think there is some speculation attached to it. And I think that's some of the stuff that you're sort of, taking a little bit of umbrage with, because he's editorializing a little bit on the back end. And that's kind of how I feel. And then we've got Patty in NYC just saying, interesting. I agree with that too. It is a little bit of an interesting take. My beef with it is twofold. I'll piggyback. I'll go to the second thing first and just say I'm with you in the sense that, look, I think Carlos Correa wants to be happy. I think he wants to be happy in Queens. I think the Mets want him to be happy in Queens. I think all of that is a given. And I think that's part of the reason why it's taking so long. I think if they weren't concerned about him being happy, I think they would have walked away from the deal. Boras and Correa would have walked away from the deal the same way they did in San Francisco. So I think that part of it is, I don't want to say understood. I don't want to say it's a given, but I think that people's feelings are being taken into account here. And I think not just feelings from like a lovey-dovey, we want you to feel comfortable from the moment you sign kind of way, but also because, again, the Mets do have the leverage, but it's going to look bad on everybody to a degree if this deal falls through. Correa does not want to go back to free agency trying to get a deal after taking a short-term deal with an opt-out last year, after being the last shortstop on the market market between all the guys, Lindor and Machado and Turner and Seager, and the list goes on and on. He doesn't want to be that guy. He doesn't want to be the person left holding the hot potato. And the Mets don't really want to sit there and go, yeah, Steve Cohen said we got a finishing piece, but now we didn't, and now there's nobody else to go get, and now we look a little dumb. Again, do I think it tanks the Mets offseason, or does it sour my opinion of Steve Cohen or this front office? No, but they are going to look a little bad about it. So I think everybody has got some skin in the game. The other thing is, a lot of people on Mets Twitter reacted to, I think, the wrong part of this yesterday. A lot of people were saying things like, the deal's going to look different. What's the deal going to look like? The deal's going to look fundamentally different. And I just want to play the beginning of this video again. And I think people are missing one key word.
We expect it to be a dramatically different deal. It's not going to be 12 years, 315 guaranteed.
The word is guaranteed, Ibby. It's not going to be 12 years, 315 guaranteed. That's what the Mets had in place. There was a no trade clause. There were, all kinds of just standard language in this deal to keep Correa a Met in the long term. Now, they might have to put some escalators in that deal to get it to 315 if he's not hurt. There might have to be some things in there. I think the framework of the deal is not going to look largely different from what we're seeing. And I think that's where Correa has some of the leverage, in that he's like, look, we agreed to this. You knew when we agreed in principle that there was an issue with my medicals, because everyone in the world knew. San Francisco made it public. You also knew that you came out and said that you're so happy that I'm here. So I think part of that stuff puts a little bit of the leverage back in Correa's corner, where he could sit there and go, look, I don't want to take a deal. Like, he's not going to turn around and take a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal with an opt-out, like something similar to what he took with the Twins last year. He's not going to take that deal. He's looking for the long-term deal now. So I think there's going to be language, but the cut and dry nature of 12, 315, guaranteed, no trade clause, boom, 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 pretty standard, sign it and go. That's the part. So I think people were missing that guaranteed part when they started to dissect that quote.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's going to be interesting, because I wonder, and again, I think this is taking a while as well, because when you start fumbling around with the word guarantees and escalators, like you're diving deeper into the players, into the players union, and how they're always so protective about players getting top dollar and making sure that things are not like, I always feel like the players union, look, I want the players to always get as much money as they can, but at the same time, you got to be careful, because if you word something a certain way, they're not going to want that to become something where the owners can then take advantage of something down the road. They're always very protective in that sense. So I think it's just, again, it's a timing thing. It sucks that we have to keep on waiting, and we're not getting the news, and we're not getting the word official attached to anything yet. But patience has always been the key, and I think they're working through it. Eventually, it's going to get there. I'm very curious as to seeing what this language could potentially be. But yeah, like I said before, I didn't think it was going to change that much. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's something along the lines where, no matter what he gets, $275 million, and the rest of that 315 can be had if he does not have X amount of days or whatever it may be, or he has to have X amount of at-bats or plate appearances in years, 8 through 10, like whatever it is. I have no idea. But trying to figure it out in that sense, it's going to take time, because the players and the players union are going to fine-tooth comb the entire thing to make sure that it's not something that can come back to bite them with further with future players down the road.
Absolutely. And I think most people in the comments are agreeing with us right now. Carlos Ortiz saying, I think he'll get the same amount with clauses that dismisses the contract if his leg causes him to not play. To me, look, that's way easier said than done, right? Because none of us, myself and Ibby included, Carlos, who made the comment, anybody who listens, watches, we're not sports agents. And, I don't know if any of you are lawyers and stuff like that. I don't want to speak, but Ibby and I aren't. So, that sounds like super simple language to put in, but even that is pretty complicated, Ibby. And we talked about it last week, where there are precedents for that with Scott Boras. He did it with JD Martinez a few years ago in the Red Sox deal. Over a decade ago, he did it with Pudge Rodriguez when he signed the Detroit deal with these potential degenerative conditions. But I do think that those issues, like I think it is, I guess what I'm trying to say to Carlos's comment is it is that simple, but it's not that easy. And I think that's part of the situation that kind of holds this up. Carlos Ramos saying perfectly said, John, we just need to chill out and wait for it to be announced. Sure. And then we've got Rael saying that he had his child wearing that t-shirt, the I Love New York t-shirt, seems to be a wink that he is happy. Or if not, he's the biggest troll in the MLB. Highly doubt. And then the rebuttal there from Carlos Ramos, the biggest troll in the MLB is Andy Martino. And I could not agree more. Baseball and BBQ sort of agreeing with you and me, but your last point, deal has to be agreed to by the Mets, Correa, Boras, the MLB, the MLBPA. That's why it's probably taking so long. And then we've got Shea. Lots of layers to this Correa deal, which is why it's taking so long. The medicals, the language, his happiness post-deal, Boras, the Mets connection, future deals, future
a lot
free
going on.
All of that is so true. You know, and I think none of it can be overlooked. You know, none of it you could sit there and say, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like there's no part of this that sounded so dumb to say out loud. None of this is a slam dunk is what I'm saying. The MLBPA, Ibby, not a slam dunk. The MLB, certainly not a slam dunk, especially the way Cohen's been spending money. You know, Correa's happiness, the Mets happiness. Like there's none of these are like, oh, just do this one thing and it's fixed. Just do this one thing and that's fixed. Like none of it is that simple. And so that's why, you know, I think we're here. What is it? It's 3 weeks later going, what the hell? And obviously the holidays play a part in that too.
Right. It does.
So, you know, look, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because we've been doing this every week. Do you think now that the holidays are behind us, do you think we're going to see a resolution this week? Do you think by the next time we record on Wednesday at 4 next week that we're going to have a resolution? Carlos Correa will or won't be a Met?
Look, I always think when we can talk, we can talk about Ken Rosenthal and how we think it's just picking things because the Mets and everything have been so, you know, close knitted in terms of keeping things in house and how could he have this information. I mentioned last week, I thought that small things would start, you know, making its way out to get into the media so it can let people know that things were eventually going to work towards that resolution. I feel that with this news, yes, I do feel that there would be a resolution. Now, look, you can look back at last week's recording as well, and I said the same thing. I said that this time I thought we'd be talking about lineup construction, and hell, we could do that if we wanted to, but I'd rather wait until the guy's actually here.
I want to wait. I don't want to touch the money, man. I don't want to touch the money.
I get it. I get that. But I can sit here and I can say, I think that there has to be some sort of resolution because once you take away the holiday aspect, which what a lot of us think is what bogged this down, you now have an opportunity and have had an opportunity to further work through said language. We look in the past, we look at JD Martinez, that took excess of over a week. Maybe if you have uninterrupted time now, where you sit at a table or you're on the phone or whatever it is, and you have, you know, nothing is to stop you from figuring this whole thing out. Look, I think personally, I think a lot of this is already taken care of. I think it's tying up the final ends, and then we're going to get an announcement. Yes, I will say it again. I'm greedy. I want it to happen sometime during this show. If it doesn't, so be it. We go live when it does. Whatever. The point is, yes, I do believe that sometime within the next handful of days, whether it's this week or the next, yes, I do think there's going to be some sort of resolution because then it's going to start. Once you lose that excuse of the holidays, now people are just going to continue to ask, what the hell is going on?
That's a good point.
Like once you have, like you lose that excuse, that's why I think there's going to be a little bit more action to get things done within the next, call it, hopefully 5 days. I would say. Hopefully 5 days.
There's no excuse now. The holidays are over. Okay. Right. You know, January 6th, little Christmas. It's fine. You can work on little Christmas. It's fine. It's not big Christmas. You know, you can figure it out. I'll jump back into the comments here real quick. Carlos Ortiz saying, my comment is simple but complex. That's the language that's being worked on. And the time is showing that they're working on it. Yeah, I think he basically clarified his comment better than I could. I was trying to say, because I was trying to not because I agree with him. I wasn't trying to be insulting, and I hope it didn't come off that way of like, no, you don't understand. It wasn't that. It was just saying like, yeah, that's one of the things that we're all looking at as fans going like, it's super simple, but it's not at the same time. Mm-hmm. This is a take I have not seen before, and this came in a few minutes ago from, I believe, a first-time commenter, maybe even a first-time viewer here live, and if it is, welcome. Justin Illusion saying, now, let me pull up the first comment there, which was, it's a two-parter. That's exactly what Steve Cohen planned. He knew he would fail a physical, which is why he swooped in and grabbed him for $315 as soon as the Giants didn't want them. Yeah. Followed it up by saying, now Steve Cohen has the leverage because other teams don't want him, and he's forced to do business with the Meds. This is all planned from the beginning. That is a pretty interesting take that I have not necessarily seen, where I guess I said something similar a couple of weeks ago after it first happened, where Steve Cohen could swoop in knowing that the Mets were, let's say, 3/4 of a way to a deal a few weeks ago, but the Giants deal was further along, right? So they had to bow out. But there was probably some framework in place. And if they agree in principle over the phone, what that does is that kind of gives the Mets, I'm going to put this in heavy air quotes, Ibby, exclusive rights to negotiate with Carlos Correa, because it's not exclusive, but it kind of serves that way because of what Justin just mentioned. Other teams now have spent their money. Other teams don't have the money. Other teams are afraid of the medicals. And so it kind of gives the Mets this good position to be like, okay, let's talk. We have the framework for a deal. Don't talk to anybody else, but I'm giving you my Letterman jacket. We are exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with Justin on this 100% because, like we said, when it first happened, he swoops in, he offers and gets the guy for whatever it was, $35 million less than what the Giants offered, right? So he comes in and he gives it, and then the whole thing happens where, oh my God, he failed the Met physical as well, and people started poking at that a little bit at the time, and it's like, well, wait a minute, like, yeah, you can poke at it all you want and think it's a joke because he failed another physical. LOL. Oh, sorry, I'm not gonna say that anymore.
You're not allowed to. That's
not allowed to say. I'm sorry. That's dollar in the jar. Not allowed to say that. But the point being, if now I lost my spot. God damn it, I lost my spot. Where was I? Bring me back. Where was I?
Well, let me jump into the comments really quick.
Where was I?
Because this is a great one. Baseball and BBQ saying, I predict it will be done before spring training. Perfect. God, Perfect. I hope so. I live in Southern California. It is usually beautiful. It is rainy. It is cold. It's rained for like a week. I got my car washed last Tuesday, and it has not stopped raining since. That's not supposed to happen here. I'm only bringing all of that up because I thought that wasn't supposed to happen in Southern California, and I just want it to be warm and feel like spring training, especially now that my Jets season is over.
Well, when it comes to weather, if it's any consolation, over here on the East Coast, where I told you the other day when I wasn't feeling too well, it was 0 degrees. Well, today it's 65 degrees. So we're kind of dealing with a little bit of an up and down over here, but it's a nice, it's better than 0. I can tell you that.
I do want to jump back in really quick, talk to Carlos Ramos. Y'all heard it, and it's being recorded. We will have extra helpings of Till Mets Do Us Part when the deal is announced.
We'll do it.
Yes. Yeah, we will. We said it. We said it a couple weeks ago. Once the turmoil kind of popped up, the first episode where we talked about it, we figured it was as good as done, the way most deals are, the way we talked about Verlander and Senga, and, even though they weren't announced yet officially and there was no press conference, we figured that was going to happen rather quickly, and we thought we could put it to bed. But as it turns out, here we are doing this thing over and over again. Bueller, just waiting for it to happen. We've got a first-time commenter just giving us some love from Arnold saying, you guys are great. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Arnold.
Great.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate the love. And James Dowling making a point that we've made a few times, but it's worth repeating during all of this, which is fans should love the silence with the organization. And Ibby, one of the things we didn't talk about last week is that Steve Cohen was reportedly pretty pissed off that the initial leak even happened. Now, I think at this point we've gone so far into this that I think people would have started to speculate regardless. But I think that really speaks volumes to the fact that, maybe Justin is onto something where, the Mets kind of expected maybe what to see in the physical, or they were, just the fact that we're sitting here with a regime that's like, look, we are going to handle this as professionally, as in-house as possible. And when you have guys like Jeff Wilpon, who ran to John Heyman and Andy Martino to tell them what he had for fucking breakfast that morning, it's so refreshing to see the difference here with Steve Cohen. And I'm happy that he was pissed. I'm not happy it was leaked, but I'm happy that he was pissed about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, it shows the professionalism that was really lacking and what caused people to laugh at this team as an overall franchise because of the way things were handled, because it was being fronted by a man-child. And now you actually have people that have a brain and are, with their focus being on putting a strong team, not only on the field, but behind the scenes as well. And it's refreshing. And like I've said it multiple times on this show, people, Mets fans in general, do not know how to operate because they're so used to seeing everything play out through the media, through rumors. And when you don't get them, you're kind of like, ooh, what's going on? And then that's what leads to what we see on Mets Twitter now of infighting and saying one thing and another person says something, you build up. And it's just like, you're used to the chaos. You're used to living within chaos. The fact that you don't have to do that anymore, that's where you have to start to learn how to live. You don't have to think the worst thing every single time. You don't. And just to bring it back to what I was trying to say before, to agree with Justin, was simply saying that, yes, I agree with the fact that you throw that money at him for the $35 million less. And yeah, there was a good portion, or there was a good chance that you said, look, he failed at physical. He might fail ours too. But if he does fail ours, it's okay, because we know, like we talked about and others said as well on other shows, they know that they're not going to back out right away because there was too much of a fear on him. So yes, to your point, there was a essentially a negotiation window where it's like, we can figure this out. We have time. You're the last big piece. People are afraid of your medicals. We're not. We will figure this out. You'll get your money one way or another. And that's what they're doing now. So yes, Justin, if you're still in the comments, if you're still here to watching, I'm with you, brother. I am.
We'll jump back into the comments real quick before we head into the break. And if anybody's watching this for the first time, the break is about 10 seconds because the audio version of this podcast has some ads that have to get thrown in that we don't do here on the live YouTube and Twitter version. So if you're watching, you're like, I don't want to sit through a break. Don't worry. The break will be over before you know it. Shay, with another great point. Steve has leverage. I agree with that. No reason to make Boris look bad or to try to outdo him by putting one over on him. Only hurts future negotiations with Boris clients. Why hurt
goes
that
both
relationship?
ways as well.
Exactly. You don't want to do that. And I don't think it would. We saw last week, Michael Conforto still signed with the Giants after everything happened with Correa and Boris reps Michael Conforto. So, I think Boris has so many high profile clients. I don't think anybody's going to be butthurt about it. Plus, right. Steve Cohen has had multi-million dollar, hundreds of $1 million deals, I'm sure, come apart before. So, he's not really scared about that. And then Shay following it up by saying, I guarantee the holdup is probably having all parties be on the same page with the story post breaking the contract. Language will take some time, but the New York media is going to continue to pry until they can get a scoop. And then we've got Carlos saying the deals should always be made behind closed doors. I totally agree with that. And then Shay, silence is golden. When the deal breaks, it will still feel good regardless when it does. Maybe that's something that a lot of people on Mets Twitter have said. Other content creators, they're like, man, that passing bomb, like it's been so long. It's going to feel like it's brand new all over again because it's been such a long time. That said, let's head into the break. We're a little bit over the 30-minute mark. Baseball BBQ saying a very long 10 seconds. And then Carlos saying 10 seconds. Jeez, come on, guys. That said, it's John Sapanaro. It's Matt Ibby Ibanez. It's Till Mets Do Us Part, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, and we will be right back. Yo, So just like that, we are back with Till Mets Do Us Part live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It is Matt Ibby Ibanez. It is John Sapanaro. We're talking all things Carlos Correa, but none of the fun stuff. None of the fun, like, oh, is he going to hit second? Is he going to hit third? Is he going to protect Pete and bat fifth? None of that fun stuff. Not yet. Maybe next week. I guess you guys are going to have to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you could be here for the conversation if and when it happens in the short term. Stevie Mack, been pretty quiet in the comments, but it was a great thing to bring up. Hit that like button during the break. You can hit the like button if you're watching us on YouTube at any point during the break, after the break, right now. If you watch it later, just hit the like button because it helps us deal with
I'm seeing 21 people in the chat right now. Obviously, not everyone's commenting, but if you're here, you're watching, thumbs up. We got 11 right now. The more likes we get, as we joked about it last week, as I'm learning YouTube more and more, the more likes that we get, the more thumbs up that we get, the better it shows in the algorithm. It shows YouTube that we are content that people want to see. We're growing within Mets Twitter. We're growing within Mets YouTube as well. So the more thumbs up we get, which means some more views, which means the more people seeing us, which means more for Till Mets Do Us Part. And that's what we are trying to build. Our watch hours are up. Our subs are up. If you haven't subbed already, make sure you do that as well. But most importantly, hit that thumbs up.
Preach, man. Absolutely fantastic. And I do want to thank everybody. 2 of the last 3 episodes, I mean, the viewership's been up across the board, like Ibby said, but 2 of our last 3 episodes are, well over 1,000 views, which is great because, some of them have happened in relatively short time. I think our episode from last week got over 1,000 views in less than a week. And so we really appreciate all of that, especially because, the content that we talk about is live and it's hard hitting. It's kind of up to the moment as best as we can be for a once a week show. So it's not necessarily evergreen unless we have a guest on, which we've had on in the past, people like, Ty Kelly and Anthony Recker, Jay Horwitz, and the list goes on and on, Turk Wendell, Glendon Rush, unless we have somebody on where we can talk about some general Mets baseball stuff, a lot of the content's not evergreen because, next week, hopefully Carlos Correa signs with the Mets officially, and some of the stuff that we're talking about this week becomes moot. So we do appreciate everybody who's watching, liking, all of that stuff. It is so important, and we appreciate it very, very much. Ibby, that said, I'm gonna dealer's choice for the second half of the show. We got a few things that we need to talk about. One of them is the Mets named an assistant hitting coach. The other is the Mets signed. What happened?
I said we got to call Aunt Rivera to break it down.
Yeah, we have to call Anthony Rivera. For those of you who don't get the joke, Anthony Rivera from Subway to Shea was on our show last year during the lockout when the best news for the Mets was that Glenn Sherlock was coming back to be the bench coach. And we were like, wow, we have to break this down for an hour. So, Ibby, we can either go assistant hitting coach, we can go depth piece in the bullpen, or we can talk about a former Met who is now staying in the NL East. Which one of those do you want to do first?
Let's talk about someone who's going to be in the NL East. Let's talk about him for a little bit. Give him a little bit of a shout.
We're talking, of course, about Dominic Smith, former first-round pick of the New York Mets, obviously fan favorite for good reasons, had his ups, had his downs. He signs a 1-year, $2 million major league deal with our division rival, Washington Nationals. And there's another $2 million in incentives, Ibby, where that deal can get up a little bit higher. But it is a major league deal, and it looks like Dom Smith is going to be playing first base for the Washington Nationals.
I'm happy that Dom Smith, look, everyone, like, you have people that are like, oh, he's part of the enemy, this, that. Look, I'm happy Dom Smith got a spot where he can play every day and he can, further along his career. Look, he had his ups and downs here, like you said. I know a lot of people automatically like to think he's going to turn into like the next Daniel Murphy. Look, if he does that, God bless him. I don't think that's the case. But if he does, good on him. And if he's going to hit 400 against the Mets, I'll curse at him at a later date. But either way, it's good for him. I'm glad that he was able to find somewhere to go. Like you said, fan favorite, just didn't work out here. And, it's not one where I'm going to be like when the Mets lost Murph, I was angry about that because I'm a huge Daniel Murphy fan. And I thought that he had a lot to offer still and could help the team win.
There's also a little bit of a Wilpon special. Not quite to the Zach Wheeler level, but it was clear that they didn't want to pay him kind of at all.
Right. And I was happy that, I said, he was going to go somewhere, and every time he faced the Mets, he was going to kill the Mets. And he did. He batted like 400 against the Mets. And I laughed every time because I was like, you could have kept him, but you chose not to. But with Dom, I look at it more in the sense of like the Justin Turner mold. people made fun of the Mets because, oh, Justin Turner leaves and becomes this big superstar in LA. It's like, that was never going to happen here.
Mhm.
It was never going to happen. He had to go elsewhere, learn from other people, get into a different system, and it worked out for him. Good for him. That's the realm that I can see Dom, if things go proper for him, that he can, emulate and look at. Like, I don't think he's going to be the Daniel Murphy like next year where he's like, he faces the Mets, he just absolutely destroys him and becomes a superstar. I don't think that's the case, but either way, good for Dom. Nats, the Nats or whatever at this point. The focus is really on the Braves and the Phils. But yeah, good for him, and wish him all the best.
Yeah, the Nats are intriguing to me because I think the Nationals are going to be one of the bottom 5 teams in baseball in terms of record. I don't think they're very good. I think their roster's bad, but there is some things about their lineup, Ibby, that's intriguing. They have some young players with some I don't know how else to describe it other than intrigue. I'm curious about Dom Smith. A guy like Lane Thomas is interesting to me. The dude whose name escapes me right now, who was the old rookie that came over, I believe, from Mexico, that finally got a shot last year and hit like 350 and a bunch of home runs. Those guys are all
CJ Abrams, another one.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot in that lineup that is intriguing to me. A lot of people echoing your sentiment for Dom, saying great for Dom, a spot with no pressure from James Dowling. And then we've got Dookie Hauser saying Nats basically got Dom for free. He'll have zero pressure there too. Carlos Ortiz saying he was one of my favorites. I hope he does well, just not against us. Another great point, by the way, from Shay. Somebody I forgot. Trevor Williams in their rotation for the Nationals. Which is interesting. Trevor Williams, another guy, super, super easy to root for. He also has a Raven tattoo, and I have a Raven tattoo. I don't know if you can see it, but so I'm always gonna spread love for people with not matching but similar tattoos. But yeah, a lot of people really showing the love for Dom. Baseball and BBQ. Good luck to Dom, except when playing against us. And I think that's the sentiment for me. Dom is a very easy guy to root for. Dom seems like he's one of the nicest people in baseball, just from, his social media presence to, all the interviews he ever gave as a Met. But for me, Ibby, he was also, as easy as he was to root for, he's that easy for me to see leave. Because it didn't work here. And I'm not being cold when I say that. It's just from a strictly baseball perspective, it's been a lot of mediocrity and it's been more bad than good. And so it's easy for me to say, look, I don't think he has a place on this team. Now, part of that is because Pete Alonso's a star. And I said that heading into last season when we were talking and previewing, I said, look, Dom Smith did some good things, especially in 2020. Dom Smith did some good things at the end of 2019. Dom Smith has a role on this team, but Dom Smith didn't do enough, especially in 2021, to supplant Pete Alonso in any way. Like, there was some conversations about, Pete should DH more and Dom should play first base. It's like, look, if Pete wants to do that, fine. And I understand Dom's a better first baseman. Pete's worked really hard at being a better first baseman, though. And if he would rather play on the field, you defer to him. He's a 40 home run, lead the league in RBIs type of player who might be a captain on this team one day. You don't move him around and mess with him because Dom Smith had, 12 good weeks spread out over 2 seasons. And again, not trying to be cold, but it just is what it is.
Yeah, it's just he never put himself in a spot where it was like, you could even think about supplanting Pete. Like if Dom was tearing the cover off the ball and hitting 25 homers a year and driving in 80, it's like, no, you never saw that. It never happened. It never materialized. And the power was always a question with him. And it's like it never hit here, and that's okay. It doesn't mean the end of the road for anyone. Sometimes you just need to change the scenery. And like people are saying, he can go somewhere where it's not going to be a very good team. He can just go out and play baseball. That's a good spot for someone, and he has the opportunity to get a second shot at his career. And I think the biggest thing, in my opinion, when it comes to Dom, when he was here, was also the square peg round hole argument, meaning the guy was a first baseman. you put him in left field, you put him in right field. Like I think of when I think of past Mets teams, I think of them like just trying to move guys around the diamond that had no right being there. I think of Murph in the outfield, like
Lucas
things
Duda,
like that.
Todd
Lucas
Hundley
Duda,
playing
like,
in the outfield for Mike Piazza. Like, stop it. Mike Piazza playing first base. Stop.
Yeah, like things like that. It just a guy is, look, as much as I am someone like from a coaching standpoint for kids, like I say you're a ball player, you can play anywhere. Yes, I can say that at a young age. Yes, there are some players at the major league level that can do that to an extent as well. But a lot of times guys are meant to be in one spot, hit every day, play every day in the same spot, get their reps. Like I get that. Major League Baseball is a lot harder than middle school and high school baseball. I understand that. I understand that. But yes, I think him getting an opportunity to play every day at his actual natural position will allow him to be something better than what he's been as a Major League ball player.
And I want to give credit where credit is due. After Dom found the sleep apnea issues and was able to lose weight, he was much more athletic. He was overall a better hitter. He was a better player. He made himself useful in left field and a little bit right field, but not as much. So I do want to give him credit where credit is due. Of the people we mentioned, Ibby, Dom was probably the best out of position player of the people we just listed. You know, Lucas Duda couldn't play in the field anywhere. Daniel Murphy was a butcher at most of the spots that he played, specifically in the outfield. Obviously, the Todd Hundley experiment was a disaster. The Mike Piazza at first base thing was a disaster. You know, Dom was, look, he was never going to win a Gold Glove in left field, but you put him out there and you weren't like, oh my God, I have to shield my eyes. I think he was athletic enough to make it work. The thing is, he didn't hit enough to make it work. He didn't hit enough to force the Mets' hand to make it work. And they tried. They tried like hell. They gave J.D. Davis and Dom Smith every opportunity to run with the job, and they never quite got it. And Carlos saying, John, you speak for both of us. Dom represents everything that was wrong with the Mets before Cohen arrived. All the best, but I will not miss him. And I think it's fair, Ibby. I think that's a fair sentiment. I've said on this show before. I've said on Twitter. Yeah, I've said it before where, you know, some of these guys, and you mentioned it with Justin Turner, you can't laugh at the Mets for Justin Turner. He was a journeyman player that they picked up off the scrap heap. Now, do I think Sandy Alderson maybe should have not just designated him for assignment and lost him for nothing on a roster that probably could have used a backup infielder the quality of Justin Turner in that particular offseason? Yeah, weird move at the time. Yeah. But nobody thought he was going to go be a star. Nobody thought he was going to become a 30 home run, third baseman, clutch player, like all this stuff. I like Justin Turner's game, but if you say that you saw that in Justin Turner,
you're lying.
You're lying. There's no shot. And that's how I feel the same way about Michael Conforto and Travis d'Arnaud. Each one of those guys had 6 years here as Mets to try to do it. I hope Michael Conforto rebuilds his career in San Francisco.
I do too.
I hate that Travis d'Arnaud is on the Braves. That makes it a little bit harder. But when people were like, oh, look at d'Arnaud, look what he's doing. Go back and look, Ibby. How many opportunities did the Mets give to Travis d'Arnaud? Yeah. He couldn't hit and he couldn't stay healthy. So, you know, to me, I don't know. I don't lose sleep over these guys, even though they seem like good people. You know what I mean? You have to separate sometimes the player from how you feel about him personally. Like I said, I met J.D. Davis. J.D. Davis is one of the nicest people I've ever met in terms of a baseball player. It didn't stop me from being like, get him off the Mets because he can't hit fastballs. He can't hit for power. He can't hit lefties. I don't know what he's doing. He struck out 10 times in a row with the bases loaded. Like, stop it with J.D. Davis. Anyway, Rael saying, Pete said more than once he wants that Gold Glove. He ain't moving for anyone. That's a good point. Patty saying, I think what we all feel is, I hope Pete never leaves.
He ain't leaving, baby. He ain't leaving.
Dookie saying, what surprised me is he had no homers. That's Dom Smith for what felt like a year. It was a year. If you go to the best beat writer on the Mets beat, of course, Mark Gooden doing the home run tracker for Dom Smith. I believe it was actually over a year where he did not hit a home run, which is it's hard to do. That's insane. It's hard to do. A Dookie saying Travis d'Arnaud was the same. He couldn't play here. That's entirely fair. Carlos saying Turner was bad with the Mets. It's true. You know, Turner was the 26th man on the roster at the time. I guess 25th man on the roster. Like Turner wasn't anything special. He's a guy you could carry, but Ibby, Turner was, for the Mets, Turner was Matt Reynolds. Turner was, I mean, he wasn't even as good of a clutch player in spots as Wilmer Flores was for us in some of those big moments. Turner was he was the last piece on a bench of a middling team. I do want to ask you this question from James Dowling. Does Dom's first home run come against the Mets?
Oh, it will. It will. You watch. It will. He'll pull one right down the line. He'll hit one out.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
It'll be off like Verlander too. He'll just jump a fastball and pull it.
It's 100% going to happen. Carlos saying Mark Gooden getting a shout out. Yeah, we love Mark Gooden here. We've tried to get Mark Gooden on the show a couple times.
I would love to have him on the show. He won't do it though. I would love to have
he
him
won't.
on here.
He won't do it because he loves doing what he does. On Twitter exclusively. But maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens down the line. Then we've got Rael saying. GENY Mets just broke that when Correa breaks, Tigers interested in Escobar. What do we want from them? I will say, take that with a grain of salt. I saw that report earlier, but I don't know if GENY Mets breaks anything or just reposts stuff. I've got a little bit of a beef. I've got a little bit of a beef.
You're fighting with Jenny now. You're fighting with everybody.
I fight with a lot of people. I'm like a bare knuckle boxer from 1850s England. I'll just take on all comers. It doesn't matter to me. I did see that report earlier today, Ibby, and that's a good question out of Rael. One name that comes to mind is probably Gregory Soto out of the bullpen. At the deadline, yeah. So I think that's a good one. I hate to do it because Rael's always like, sorry. No, we're not talking about you. I'm not saying it's more a reflection on that other Twitter account, not you. You're great. And I appreciate you bringing it up. And then she follows it up by saying it was The Athletic. Yeah, I believe that report was from The Athletic. Ibby, the Tigers have some starting pitchers. The Tigers have definitely some bullpen pieces. I could see an Escobar deal working with the Tigers if Correa signs.
Let me ask you something. I got one for you, and we can ask the chat as well.
Yeah, throw it in the comments for everybody. Would you trade him to the Tigers? Would you give up on Escobar? Not give up. Would you trade Escobar and his remaining money if the deal for Correa goes through?
Right. And also, would you do it where I'll throw this to you, John, and to the people in the chat. Would you be more inclined to deal away, and again, assuming the returns are proper, whatever they may be, to trade away Eduardo Escobar if it brought you a bullpen piece, whoever it may be, just assuming, I won't put a name on it, I'll just say a name that makes a lot of sense for the bullpen,
right?
Or would you rather trade Carlos Carrasco if it brought back to you a piece for the bullpen? And I say Carrasco because you could still go out and then sign if you wanted to, like a Johnny Cueto type to fill that spot if you wanted to. Would you rather? So basically the question is, would you rather deal away Carrasco or would you rather deal away Escobar?
That's a tough question. My initial feeling, that's a good one. My initial feeling, and that's a great question for the comments. If you had to trade one, who would you rather trade the way that this roster is currently constituted? Also, as an addendum to that, assuming that Carlos Correa is on this roster plus Correa, who would you rather trade? Escobar makes the most sense logically because it's easy to fill that role with a combination of you don't need Escobar. You've got an everyday third baseman now. You've got an everyday second baseman, everyday shortstop. You're set on the infield. I think Escobar would be a good DH bench piece, but you could just go get a guy like Adam Duvall and have him split the DH at bats and get a little bit of burn in the outfield. Adam Duvall becomes your fourth outfielder, your backup first baseman, and your part-time DH. And then Vogelback and Duvall split the DH duties. I think that's fine, and it's going to come cheaper than Eduardo Escobar. But, Ibby, I will throw this out to you. So my pick, if you made me only pick one, would be Escobar because I think it's the clearest path. However, I would also, in the right deal, give up Carrasco because I'm confident in one of Peterson or McGill being your fifth starter. If there was no other accompanying move made, plus don't forget the return of Joey Lucchesi. So I think the Mets are covered pretty well to move either one of those pieces in the right deal.
Has to be the right deal. Yes.
Not for salary relief.
No.
But a deal that brings you back something that also sheds a little bit of money in a place where you don't necessarily need to allocate those resources. David Peterson and Tyler McGill are going to be way cheaper than Carlos Carrasco, and they may be better than him in 2023. So I think in that sense, either one makes sense. If we sign Carlos Correa, I would entertain trading both guys. I will say that.
Okay. Yeah, I bring it up because I look at it and I go, I see a couple of comments and we'll rattle off some of them in a minute. Like, I'm not very keen on giving up Escobar because I do like the versatility he offers. I do like the fact that he could slot in as the DH along with Vogelback. I do like, look, we joke about it and everyone ran with it for the last 2 years when it comes to, clubhouse chemistry and all this stuff. But look, I look at a lot of the things that get posted by the Mets and get said by Mets players and how he interacts with the clubhouse. I think taking a piece like that away from a team, I think it hurts in a sense. And we can say, look, maybe you don't think it's going to hurt as much from an on-field perspective because of the talent that you're bringing in. And you may very well be right. But I think a lot of these things also run a little bit deeper when you're trying to put together a culturally strong team that's trying to win. I think he is a part of that end game. Like, he should be there for that. I want to put it out there. Like you're saying, you would trade both if it's proper. Look, if things are proper, I will listen to anything. If it makes sense, I listen to anything. But for me, I know they're entertaining and you have to exhaust every way you can go about things. But for me, I'm not trying to really move either of them. I'm really not, unless I get blown away. So if you say to me, yes, Detroit is willing to give me Soto straight up for Escobar, like, I like Gregory Soto. I think Gregory Soto makes a lot of sense. We've talked about needing another lefty. If you tell me I get Soto and Raley in the pen, look, I'd bite the bullet and say, thank you, Eduardo, and I'll take my risk and I'll take this arm because there's not another lefty arm out there. Sans Andrew Chafin, but again,
doesn't look likely for Andrew Chafin.
It doesn't. So it's and the fact that he's been sitting out there for as long as he has makes me wonder if a lot of teams are just questioning Andrew Chafin in general.
Maybe it's the vaccination thing. I don't want to take it to that level, and I don't want to derail the conversation. But he may still not be vaccinated, and I think at this point that's going to be a problem in a lot of places. So
could be. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but I think if you said to me, "Look, it's Escobar for Soto, you can have it right now." Look, in comparison to what they were probably asking for Soto, who was having a good year last year when it came to the prospect capital that they were probably asking for, which is why the Mets didn't entertain going after him last year like many thought that they would. I think it makes a little bit more sense. He's got a year left, and then, that I think it becomes a team option. But if you're asking me straight up, I would rather keep both guys. But again, if I'm being offered things, I have to exhaust every single possibility.
Yeah, I want to jump into the comments. We've got a lot flying in and kind of work in reverse order a little bit. Dookie saying what you just said. I'd trade anyone if it makes the team better. And, obviously, there are some people you don't trade in those situations, Pete Alonso and stuff like that. But the sentiment of what he's saying is I totally agree with. And that's kind of how you end it off. But a lot of other people, agreeing with kind of both of us saying, hey, I'd trade Escobar for the right deal. Don't trade him just to make a trade from baseball and BBQ. Carlos taking a little bit more of a hard stance. Carlos Ramos, in my opinion, we shouldn't trade Escobar. He gives us 20 plus home runs, versatility, and a bat we need. Trade Cookie. Fair point.
Very fair.
Then we've got Shea saying, I love Escobar and his energy, which kind of goes to what you're saying about the winning culture and what he brings to the team outside of his play on the field. Wouldn't trade him. That being said, if he was, I would see for a bullpen piece, maybe pair with Vientos to get a good piece back. And I think that's really what we're looking at. And then Rael with a great point here. Whoever they trade, they need to fold Ruff into the deal. Like I said earlier, they could fire Darren Ruff into the sun out of a giant cannon, and I wouldn't even bat an eye. I do think he's probably the most likely person to go. That is Darren Ruff, because I think I could see the Mets unloading him to a team that just wants to take a flyer on a hitter, a guy with some pop. Maybe Miami, maybe Tampa, maybe Cleveland, a team that's just like, this guy's hit lefties well in his career. He can wind up on another team and do some good stuff. And I will say there were some comments here about Vogelback and the difference between Vogelback and Escobar. I said a couple weeks ago, I would like to keep Escobar as the DH And Vogelback only making $1.5 million means that he could never take a DH at bat all season long, only come off the bench to hit right-handers in a big spot, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning, and he would be worth the money because he hits right-handers with a ton of authority. He hits them well, gets on base a lot against them, and he makes $1.5 million. So for me, you can carry both of them on the team and give most of the DH reps to a guy like Escobar, especially being a switch hitter. Again, if you're telling me we can get Liam Hendricks, Gregory Soto, Max Kepler, if you're starting to deal in those things where you can make the team better in another way,
you got to entertain it. Yeah, you have to entertain it.
I think you have to.
That. Yeah.
I totally agree there. We got a few minutes left to play with. Let's jump into some of these other things. I'm so happy that we did not have to spend a ton of time talking about this one because it was the Glenn Sherlock situation all over again. But this one is of note, Ibby, because it's a domino that falls. When the Mets make Eric Chavez the bench coach, they promote their assistant hitting coach to hitting coach, and that means that they have an opening at assistant hitting coach, and they go out and they get Eric Hinsky. He's been an assistant hitting coach with Chicago and Arizona. Of course, he was the assistant hitting coach on the Chicago Cubs team that won the World Series. And then he was the hitting coach only for 1 year with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, where he was hired famously by Billy Epler. So your thoughts on Eric Hinsky? Hitting coaches, meh, but your thoughts.
When it comes to hitting coaches, look, I always say this, but hitting coaches and pitching coaches are the ones that get the most pressure because if things aren't going the proper way for either side, they're the ones that get questioned the most when it comes to whether it's the actual hitting coach or their staff who's beneath them or whatever. They get canned right away. It's whatever. I mean, I'm not, I really don't have much to offer on this one. For a guy formerly employed by Billy Epler, the familiarity, I'm sure, works into this. I remember Eric Hinsky as a solid hitter when he was in Toronto. That's when I think of him the most. I know he likes Pantera, so that's kind of cool. But other than that, I mean, it's whatever. It's an assistant hitting coach. There's not much to really break down in the sense of, because again, we as fans have no clue what an assistant hitting coach is doing on the day-to-day. We don't know anything in that sense. So it's like, all I can say is, welcome to the squad. Happy to have you. Let's go freaking hit the ball. All right. That's all I can really say.
Yeah. Like familiarity with Billy Epler is a big part of that. Congratulations on getting the gig. Also was a scout with the Yankees. I think that was his first post-playing career thing. So look,
I feel like everybody's a scout with the Yanks.
What happened?
I feel like the Yanks always I feel like everyone's at one point is like a former player is always a scout with the Yanks.
Yeah.
That's the way it always feels.
Yeah. So you know what? Listen. It's good for him staying in baseball, staying around the sport that he loves. It's baseball and BBQ kind of says it. Hitting coach, no big deal, meh. And it's like, I take that one step further because he's the assistant hitting coach. Like I would have even more to say if he was our regular hitting coach, but like assistant hitting coach, like you said, I've been in dugouts and I don't know what an assistant hitting coach would do aside from like maybe run and get printouts. Like I have no idea what that job is. Shea throwing out something here that we talked about. I think when the news was announced with Eric Chavez, is Chavez potentially being groomed to take over post Buck? I think it's possible. I think that's highly possible. I think it's too early to close the book on Buck Showalter's career. I think he's lively. I think he's got a ton of energy. I think he wants to win a World Series. He just won Manager of the Year. I think Buck's got a good run left in him. But Ibby and I talked about the fact that it was curious when they hired the aforementioned Glenn Sherlock because we both thought that it would have been good to pair Buck with a younger guy who they could be the heir apparent, who could learn from Buck. And I think, Ibby, I think we talked about this. It maybe was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge deal with Eric Chavez, because remember, he was apparently going to be the hitting coach of the Yankees. Then he took the job with the Mets, and everybody said it was for a different role. But then as it turned out, it wound up being the same role, but only for 1 year. So I think he was sitting on the bench learning from both Buck Showalter and Glenn Sherlock, and now he's kind of the, no guarantees. But yeah, if you want to call him the heir apparent, I would be comfortable doing that.
I think the best way to look at it, like the blueprint that might be followed, and like you said, no one is closing the book on Buck, but I think the blueprint that might be followed here is the one that's going on in Houston, where it's Dusty Baker keeps on coming out and he says, I want to keep on managing. And you have Joe Espada as the bench coach there, who's, look, his name has been bantered about, potentially with the Mets. We heard about it when it was potentially with the Marlins as well. They went a different direction, but it seems as though he is getting himself ready to potentially be the heir apparent to Dusty once he's done. So he's hanging out there, which is a great spot for him because it's the Houston Astros and they're phenomenal. So that could be the same thing that kind of happens here if the Mets continue to build and Buck is basically riding out his final years, whatever that may be. Chavez can hang out here as well and say, look, eventually I'll be here, and then I get my chance. So I think that's the type of blueprint you could be looking at.
Yeah, and all jokes aside, it's so funny because this we were joking about it when we started the show about how, we're not going to talk about the breakdown of Eric Hinsky being the assistant hitting coach the way we did during the lockout with Glenn Sherlock being the bench coach, but here we are bringing up Glenn Sherlock 9-10 times on the show already. But
Ant's gonna love it.
It is funny, though. Yeah, shout out to Aunt Rivera, Subway to Shea, by the way. I'm sure you guys know that show, but if you don't, Ibby and I have both been guests together and separately.
Ant's the man.
Aunt Rivera does a great job. He was live in the comments, I think, last week or the week before with us here for the entire show. Former guest on this show. You should go check him out, Subway to Shea. But it's funny because when we were talking in that episode, I thought the Glenn Sherlock thing was curious because I would have thought the Mets would have gone with a Joe Espada or a Matt Cutraro, one of the guys who didn't get the manager job that went a little further down the line, a little further into the process, and then also didn't get hired anywhere else. It's like, hey, you want the bench coach job under Buck, you can have it. So I think that would have been an interesting way to go. So it was strange to see them pivot to Sherlock. So this thing for me makes a lot of sense, even though it's a year later to have Eric Chavez kind of take over as the bench coach. Carlos Ramos saying Carlos Beltran, future Hall of Famer and next Mets manager. Listen, me and Ibby both love Carlos Beltran.
I love Carlos Beltran. He is a Hall of Famer. I don't care what anybody says.
He's absolutely a Hall of Famer. Some of those Hall of Fame ballots are an absolute joke. I think Beltran was probably invited to get a job here with the Mets. I think those whispers were true, and I don't think he wanted to jump back in.
I want that fence to be mended so badly because I think that the way that I know the Wilpons were here when he got hired as the manager, but I still feel like there was just like open wounds, whether it's the media or the Wilpons themselves. Like I feel that Carlos Beltran deserves so much more for what he provided for this team. He was a phenomenal ball player. And the day he goes into the Hall of Fame, he should be wearing a Mets hat. But I question if he would go the route of no logo or if he would opt and ask, hey, can I go in with a Royal hat? When you look at the numbers, he should go in with a Mets hat on. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I seriously want that fence to be mended. And I think Steve Cohen is, from what we've seen, with paying homage to the past and taking care of ex-players, I want that to be mended. And hopefully it's the next thing that can happen when it comes to fixing wrongs from the past, and they could be, better moving forward.
Rael has an interesting take. Says, do you think Beltran makes it in the first ballot? If so, what cap? For what it's worth, I hope he doesn't. And if he does, not in a Mets cap, let KC have him. And then follows it up by saying he was a diva when he was on the Mets. Clubhouse divider. Facts. And then says,
Rael.
No, Ibby, you just broke my heart. And sorry, Carlos, too, but never Beltran. Listen, entitled to have that opinion. I'm sorry, Rael. I'm going to agree with Ibby. I love Carlos Beltran. I think he gets a bad rep for taking a strike three in an impossible case against the guy who was out there, who was basically unhittable at the time, and Adam Wainwright. It was a tough spot to be in. The Mets probably, if a couple things break right, don't come down to that final at bat anyway. So I think he gets a lot of flack. I know that he's a little aloof and he wasn't necessarily the most connected guy at times, but you can make a case that Carlos Beltran is the single greatest free agent signing the Mets have made to date. In terms of the production that he gave on the field, Ibby. I mean, obviously there are some other people you hope pan out better that the Mets have made over the recent term, right? If the deal with Carlos Correa goes in, you hope that he kind of takes over that mantle. But right now it's Carlos Beltran and everybody else. And I don't count players like Johan Santana, who were traded for an extended. So players like Lindor, who were traded for an extended. To me, they don't count because it came first as a trade. So to me, you look at Carlos Beltran as the single greatest free agent signing the Mets have ever made. So,
yeah, I'm with you, and I'm seeing some of the comments in here, and I'm a little upset. So I'm not gonna attack him too much. But I know that Carlos Beltran is a very divisive name when it comes to Mets fans because of how they feel about 2006 and everything that you mentioned before. But for me, I look beyond that. I don't blame the guy for that. Look, if you want to blame something about 2006 Mets fans, blame the fact that
I know what you're going to say.
You think I'm going with Jose Valentin? Because that's where I was going.
Oh, I thought you were. I thought you were going to blame it on Duaner Sanchez's cab ride.
Oh yeah, you can blame Duaner Sanchez for getting in the cab accident because that derailed him and killed the bullpen. You can blame, which I think was the biggest moment of that game, when Jose Valentin popped up with the bases loaded. You can blame the fact that, another reason why I want to work to try and get Cliff Floyd on the show at some point. I want to ask him if it's true where Willie Randolph essentially told Cliff Floyd to go hit a home run as opposed to laying down the bunt like he wanted to. There's a lot of ways you can look back at 2006. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it sucks that the way it happened. Yes, I truly believe that they would have steamrolled the Tigers. Like, look, it's whatever. Jeff Suppan sucks, all that stuff, whatever else you want to say. Like, that's the way I view it. Everyone has their opinions, and you're all welcome to them, but that's kind of where I am on that.
Yeah, slightly different take, and I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, but it's good conversation. Baseball and BBQ, I had this up a second ago, says, given the scandal that he was involved in, Beltran, that is, talking, of course, about the Astros, I'd rather him not go in with a Mets cap. Again, a valid opinion to have, just like Rael's, just like some of the other folks that don't like Beltran, that's fine. We just have to agree to disagree on this. I also don't care much about the scandal. I think baseball talks out of both sides of their mouth and always has when it comes to cheating. Look, do I think baseball's better without steroids? Yes. Do I think baseball's better having exposed the Astros for what they were doing? Because the Red Sox were probably doing something similar. The Yankees were probably doing something similar. Yeah, I think it's better off. But baseball's always wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You can't put anything on the baseball except if you're Mike Scott and we don't want to talk about it. So then that's fine. Scuff it. Or you can't throw a spitball except if you're fucking Vita Blue. Then you can do it because you were in the league before we said
Gaylord Perry.
Yeah, like all this stuff is just like, stop. So to me, that's my feeling. But anyway, I don't want to get too in the weeds on that. Like I said, I will say, Ibby, before we get out of here, we do have to address the last thing that the Mets did, which is insignificant, but also not insignificant, which is the signing of TJ McFarland to a minors deal. And the only reason why I bring this up, Ibby, look, none of those numbers jump off the page, 24-15, 4.13 ERA, a whip near 1.5, they don't really stand out as great numbers in any regard, but it's a minors deal. And you mentioned earlier, Gregory Soto, Andrew Chafin, we've got Brooks Raley as the lefty in the pen. I think a move like this for depth as a potential lefty coming out of the pen that might make the team out of spring training can't be overlooked, because I'm the type of person, if I was constructing the Mets roster, I would try to have or any team's roster. I want two lefties in my bullpen all the time. So I look at this as a possibility of, if he has a good spring training, could maybe make the team in the bullpen.
Yeah, I look at this the same way. I'm similar to you in that sense, where I would love to have two lefties. I love offering different looks because not every lefty is the same. And I look at this as kind of like that Chase and Shreve a couple of years ago, where it's like you bring in a lefty, you see if he can make it. If he shows out in the spring, there you go. You found a cheap option. And again, I know I shouldn't be saying cheap because that doesn't matter, but the whole idea is it's not like you're expending a bunch of funds to try and find something where you just found something literally off the scrap heap, because a lot of times that's what happens with relievers. A lot of times it's guys you had no idea about and they end up showing out. And that could happen here. We'll see. It's whatever. I still would like to see them attack something else in the bullpen. So I like the idea that you're saying, where in terms of depth, no issues whatsoever. Just don't go into it and saying, okay, here's our second lefty. I don't think that's what they're going to do.
Correct.
But what we're saying is depth piece, down low, try out for camp, see what happens. If not, cut bait, whatever, doesn't matter. That's fine.
And to Stevie Mac's point, just as long as it's not Brad Hand again. I think there's a difference, Ibby, between cheap and affordable. I think when the Wilpons ran the team, it was cheap. I think when the Wilpons ran the team, they're like, here's your lefty. We signed him for $500K. We invited him to spring training. He had a 3.50 ERA against minor leaguers, but we're going to war with him in April anyway. I think affordable is fine. They went out, they traded for Brooks Raley, who's become a very good lefty reliever. Certainly not super heralded the way a guy like Chafin is, but somebody who's very good. And now they're looking and saying, hey, maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle. I don't know if this is true. It looks like you're looking at your phone, Shay, saying, wow, Rafael Devers to an 11-year, $332 million deal. I'm assuming that's
Boston finally woke up
with the Red Sox. Look at that. Shay.
Physical pending. Pending.
Yeah, we got to say that nowadays. Ibby, I was about ready to get out of here. Do you have a couple minutes to talk about this real quick?
Yeah, I got a couple minutes.
All right, let's dive into this then. Obviously, pending a physical. Shay, thank you for being the first person to bring this up. Big news. Potential target of the Mets if the Correa deal fell through, right? I didn't think so. Ibby didn't think so, that it was realistic. Nope. But something that could have been on the table and was on the table for some people. Obviously, now that's not the case. Boston finally realized that they're a big market team again and they should spend money instead of letting some of the greatest players in baseball just walk away for nothing. Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, whatever. Anyway, Ibby, does this, I don't care about Rafael Devers. He plays in the other league. He's not in our division. I didn't think he was coming to the Mets. That's what I mean when I say I don't care. What I want to talk to you about is this deal is oddly similar to the proposed Correa deal with both the Mets and the Giants. Lands kind of right in the middle. So your thoughts on how this might affect the Mets and the Correa deal? Maybe there's, I don't know, some impetus to maybe get this done?
I don't think it's going to affect it too much. Again, mainly because of the whole physical aspect and what's going on with Correa. But we'll see how that ends up shaking out. But in terms of this deal in general, you knew that he was going to get something around what the initial Correa deal was. Because, look, in my opinion, I think Rafael Devers is better than Carlos Correa. That's not to say I don't want Carlos Correa. I think Carlos Correa is a damn good ball player. But I think Rafael Devers is one of the top 10 players in baseball. That's my opinion. Anyone else can have a different one, but I think
Stevie Mack does.
Yeah. But look, I think Devers is fantastic. I really do. And he's young and he's controllable now for his entire prime. I think he makes a lot of sense for Boston. So I knew he was going to get that type of money. To me, this is again, baseball in general, it's all play money. It doesn't matter.
If you look at it like Monopoly money, it's a lot better.
It's whatever. It's not yours. It's whatever. Like, look, you might feel a little bit more when a guy's on your team and he doesn't perform, whatever. So you want to rip into something because it's something that you can do. It makes you feel better. That's whatever. But to me, Rafael Devers is a damn good ball player. I love watching him play. I'm happy that the Red Sox finally woke up because I ripped them last week and I was going to continue them because I thought they were going to let this guy go. They wrap it up. He gets his money. And I think unless it's baked in, unless this is considered an extension or a new deal because he just got the 17 million. So technically you would then add on 17 to what he just got to total the entire thing. So he made out like a bandit, got his money, deserved, in my opinion, from what he's provided for that team and what he can do for them as they try and fix this ship that seemed to be sinking over the next decade.
Yeah. And it's funny because when he first came up, we're talking about giving guys credit. He was an absolute butcher at third base. And I don't think he's ever going to win a Gold Glove at third base, but he has made himself so much better as a third baseman, which is obviously not how you get paid $300 million. He's getting paid $300 million for his bat, for his power potential, for the way he knocks in runs, for the fact that he hits for a good average, I should say. So obviously that's what's getting him paid. But Ibby, I always tip my cap to guys who come out there and, look, you look at a comp when Miguel Andujar first came up with the Yankees, Devers, Andujar, similar style of players. And then it was just like, here he goes. He's just passing him. And then it was off to the races. And so, kudos to Devers for making a ton of money. Kudos to Devers for getting paid by the Red Sox, which seemingly they don't do right now. So maybe this is, look, I think baseball is better when the Red Sox try to win. I think baseball is better when the Cubs try to win. I think, when the big market teams act like big market teams, baseball is better. That's one of the reasons, apart from being a Mets fan, that I always hated on the Wilpons, because everybody else was acting like a big market team, even if they were doing it poorly, like the Angels, right? Yeah. Like teams doing it, and the Wilpons were just like, no, we can't possibly do it. So I don't know if you have any clarification on whether or not it's going to come off of the heels of after this year, or does that absorb the agreement in our arbitration that they settled on?
I don't have it in front of me. I see that Carlos threw in the comments that it was extension.
Yep.
Heyman just put out 331, 11 years. Agree with the Red Sox, 20 million bonus. No trade.
Okay.
And apparently Carlos Baerga was the first on it. Hey, shout out Carlos Baerga.
Yo, Carlos Baerga has become like a folk hero in terms of baseball news, man. Like worst acquisition the Mets have ever made. Like terrible. Bottom 5 for sure. But man, Carlos Baerga seems like a fun guy. I'm serious. So yeah, we don't know if it's going to, it probably tacks on after this year because I know that other deal was agreed to. It doesn't prevent them from negotiating on a new deal, but I would imagine, Ibby, that this is probably going to be really a $12 million deal, kind of like, a 12-year deal, kind of like what happened with the Mets and Francisco Lindor, where they were in it for the 1 year and then they tacked on after the fact. So, we've got a couple comments coming in from Shay. Carlos Baerga, the crystal ball, absolutely. And then Carlos Ramos bringing this up. Hey, guys, can we talk next week about Brett Beatty playing left field next season as an option at least? I think we should talk about that next week. Especially, I think we should talk about it either way. But if the Carlos Correa deal goes through, we're talking roster construction, lineup construction. I think that's a good topic. And if it doesn't go through, it's certainly going to be a better topic than one of the ones we had today, which is the Mets signing TJ McFarland to a minors deal. So, I'll talk about anything. If you guys have suggestions, please let us know because Jesus, that is
absolutely.
I don't want to talk about hitting coaches anymore.
I got plenty of thoughts on Brett Beatty. So yes, I'm ready to talk about that next week. That's a great starting point for us.
Ibby, we are at 30 viewers actively right now, and I just want to thank all the people who are watching. And as soon as I said that, it went down to 29, of course.
Okay, hit that thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up.
Hit that thumbs up. Hit that like button.
Come on, guys, you can do it.
Ibby, let's get out of here because we are at an hour 20, and I don't want to keep anybody any longer than that. So, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Just I hope that Carlos Correa signs by the next time we hit record. And again, thank you so much to everybody that has been supporting us. If I could show you guys the charts that I've been reading with our overall YouTube channel and the growth that we've had, it's been incredible this past month, specifically this past 2 weeks. The fact that we have 30 people in here right now is a lot more than what we've had. Thumbs up, follow on. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. The thumbs up goes a long way. It puts us into better space when it comes to Mets content, and we're showing up in the Wardies and the Ryan Finkelsteins and their related videos. So more people are seeing us because of you guys. We appreciate it. Like I was saying, 31 people in here right now. That is 5 times more than we're used to having in here, which is fantastic. It shows that there is growth and more people are seeing us. We love it. We have a lot on the horizon. We have a huge season ahead of us. We want to keep growing, and we need each and every one of you. So again, 30 people in here right now. If you haven't already, that thumbs up is right there. Make sure you hit it. And if you haven't subbed to us, we're at 177 subs. So we've got up a couple since we started. Hit that subscribe, and we will provide you with the best Mets content that we can.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So let me just say that this is Till Mets Do Us Part, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Best way to interact with the show every week, you guys know, is here on YouTube, where your comments come in real time, like Carlos giving us a little bit of a compliment. Thank you. He says, you guys are great. Really appreciate that. And we appreciate all of our listeners, all of our viewers, whether it's live or after the fact. Like Ibby said, we are going to continue to do our absolute best to make sure that we give you the best stuff that we can. We're always as timely and as consistent as we can, given our respective schedules, especially now that my work schedule ramps back up this week and I go travel the country basically for the next 6 months. But we will be here. We've got some guests, maybe some returning guests and stuff on the horizon. We're just trying to square some things away. So as we get kind of deeper into the off season and a little closer to spring training, we'll try to pull some of those folks back out. That's always going to be a great time. And like Ibby said, subscribe, turn notifications on, hit that thumbs up button, and follow us across all social media at Till Mets Do Us Part on Instagram and on Twitter. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you can follow us. I'm at John Sapanaro. He's at Poison Ibby, both on Twitter and Instagram as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. We will talk to you next week or sooner
Sooner.
Carlos Correa becomes a Met sooner than next week. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.